Total Package Lex Luger, and you're watching That Way Cool Wrestling Show right now.
Hello and welcome to That Way Cool Wrestling Show. My name is Danny J. This is a show about professional wrestling. We're not talking about results. We're not talking about what happened on Monday night or Thursday night. We're talking about the sport that we love, which kept us involved from young to old and everywhere in between. Thank you for joining us. This is That Way Cool Wrestling Show. You can join us on thatwaycoolwrestlingshow.com. I got a great panel of guys on here who are workers in the business as well as fans. First to my right, promoter, performer, good friend of mine, Charles Gemini Gregory. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you. To my left, another guy who was influential in my own training as a professional wrestler, active performer, great guy, and don't meet him in a dark alley. We got LeGrande Onslaught Jackson.
What's up?
And then we got right here, last but not least, super fan extraordinaire, Mark Lindsay. Mark, thank you for going on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, like I said, this show is going to be different than any other show out there because we're not going to be talking about what's happening right now. We're not talking about what's happening with this performer, that performer. We're talking about wrestling in general. So this is something where, you know, when you're on the couch and you're watching this stuff and, you know, the things that went into your mind when we were watching stuff. I grew up watching stuff like Ric Flair, Dusty Rhodes, you know. Back in the day we had Hulk Hogan, we had Tito Santana. All these guys that when we were young got us involved in this, and it was like a drug and we couldn't get away from it. And that's what we're going to be talking about, what that was, what drew us in, what kept us there for all these years. This is going to be a great show. It's going to be one of my favorites. We're talking about tag team wrestling, okay? And when I talk about tag team wrestling, the first thing I want to do is, what actually makes a good tag team? Charles, I'll start with you.
In my opinion, a good tag team is two guys that complement each other. I started out in tag team. I always loved being a tag team. My tag team partner was my cousin. He always had my back. I had his back. If you're not cohesive, like nowadays I watch sometimes and they throw these guys together. We trained over the Monster Factory. When we came in, he trained us as a tag team. Everything we knew, everything we did was done as a tag team.
Right.
Nowadays they throw these guys together and they might work out with each other for a while, and this to me looks horrible.
Right.
A good tag team, like I said, they complement each other. They know each other's moves. They know each other's weaknesses. I would say they flow.
Right.
Flow. Right. Like I said, I got lucky. Me and my cousin were both about the same size. When we came in, our combined weight was 680 pounds legitimately.
Right.
We never jacked up weight. You know, we even got as high as 700 pounds.
Right.
We could still go up the top rope. My cousin was strong as a bull. He picked dudes up. I come flying off the top for some reason. That's why I walk funny now, because I can't, you know. But that's what makes a tag team. These guys nowadays.
Well, getting back to like you're saying, that was your cousin, so that's family. You really have
family,
you know that. But is there a scenario where maybe family doesn't work out in that sense?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. You look. One of my favorite tag teams ever was the Hollywood Blondes.
Okay. Which version?
Austin and Pillman.
Okay.
They both had that. They had that aggressiveness, but
Yes.
Pillman was that loose cannon.
Yes.
And I used to love it. They were probably one of the greatest. Like to me, that if they, you know, if things were still the same, and you know, we lost Brian Pillman years ago, but
Right.
they were an incredible tag team. They complemented what each other did.
Right.
I think one day we were talking about the powers of pain.
Yeah.
It was great. They Demolition complemented each other.
And to say, because a lot of teams, like you mentioned, Powers of Pain and stuff like that. Demolition first got that niche of like, oh, you're a LOD knockoff.
Of course, yeah.
And then Powers of Pain came out, and you're like, well, wow, they really are a knockoff because they look almost
Demolition
identical.
could work. You know, you had Bill 80, and then you had Crusher Khrushchev, Barry Dorsal, and they could work.
Yeah.
So they kind of had that unfortunate, Road Warrior wannabes.
Yeah.
But they were in the ring with Tully and Arn. They were in the ring with the Rockers. They were in the ring with Powers of Pain, and that kind of made them legitimate. That made them just as good. Well, I mean,
technically, as workers, they were fine.
Yeah, right.
And if anything, they did some stuff differently than the Road Warriors.
And Chuck touched upon this earlier. You know, now tag teams are kind of just two individual guys that creative doesn't have anything for that are thrown together.
Yeah.
And that's what I find sad.
I mean, not even thrown together. You can throw two guys together, but you can tell if I'm looking over, if I'm working with where I have done several shows with my man Onslaught here. We go back a little bit. Not saying we're friends, but we know each other.
Right.
So we could flow with each other. You know, I had to do some tag team matches. You know, you go to different shows and you go do them like, who in the hell is this? And I'm teaming with this guy who doesn't know anything about me. You know, and things like that. And you have to work it and try to make it work. Mm-hmm. But that's not a tag team. That's just something they throw together. I always say to fill spots.
That's a one-hitter quitter.
One-hitter quitter,
because
absolutely.
Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But a lot of time, you get this. I don't want to use $50 words or nothing like that. I'm gonna keep it as basic as possible.
Right.
It's a crap show.
Yeah.
Because you'll have a high flyer with a power guy, which is a great dynamic.
Yes.
When they know each other. But if you don't know how to set the guy up for what he needs, then it's a crap show. Because you got a guy too busy worrying about his individual achievement instead of what makes the team progress.
Or you got a 190 pound flyer trying to do power moves, and you're sitting there like, okay, this is the drizzling shits, we used to call it. And you're just like, where'd this guy come from? A tag team, when you're a tag team, you're a team.
Yeah.
Okay, you're a team. You work as a team. You know, who was it? I said like, really like, you got to say the Minnesota Wrecking Crew.
Yes.
That was a team. You know that.
Now, just for reference, are you talking about Gene and Ole, or are you talking about Ole and Arn?
Ole and Arn.
Ole and Arn. Okay.
I was more into Ole and Arn. Even, I mean, we talked about being family members. I don't care what anyone says. You can say whoever. You know, people say the Rock and Roll Express. People say this. Right. The greatest tag team I think out there at one point ever were the Steiner brothers.
Yes.
They, of course.
Yes.
They could work, and it was just the things they did in that ring. I think they invented some moves.
I would honestly have to say, though, the Steiner brothers, in my own opinion, are probably one of the only teams out there that you could actually hold neck and neck with the Road Warriors, as far as a built legacy can be. Yes. You know, I mean, the Road Warriors. If we go around the room, I'm sure everybody will say, well, who's the greatest tag team of all time? 9 out of 10 times, somebody's going to say the Road Warriors.
Of course.
Okay? And when you think about the Road Warriors, they did do the Triple Crown. You know, they did AWA, NWA, and WWF. But they, but they really didn't do that much because they were always the chaser.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that was the big thing about them. That was the big draw about them.
Right.
You know, they didn't need the belts. And there's always the thing about, like, you put the belt on someone that you need to push. Mm-hmm. If you don't need to push them, they don't get the belt type of thing. And the Road Warriors were like that. But then the Steiners, and there was great tag teams. I mean, if I say a favorite tag team of mine, one of my favorites were the British Bulldogs. Mm-hmm. And you had that complement. You had a power guy and a speed guy. And they were fantastic. You know, some people like the Hard Foundation.
Yeah, but the Bulldogs, which you're also, and this will be another subject for another show, the British Bulldogs kind of lost their steam when they lost Captain Lou Albano. So the Road Warriors, part of what made them a great tag team, they had a talker. Now, I think, in my opinion, as a fan, Hawk was excellent at promos. Right. You know, Animal would be the beginner.
Yeah.
Hawk, tell him, Hawk, well... And then you had Paul Ellering in the background with his Wall Street Journal.
Well, you know, getting back to what you were just saying about the British Bulldogs now, Paul Ellering was in and out.
Of course.
A lot. Mm-hmm. So the Road Warriors were able to stand on their own, just on their own accord, because they were able to talk for themselves, unlike the Powers of Pain, who needed somebody.
Mr. Fuji or whoever,
Or whoever, Mm-hmm. Give the guys who can't talk another guy who can't talk. That's a fantastic gimmick right there. But you know, because when Mr. Fuji, you couldn't understand Mr. Fuji at the time, and then these guys are not saying anything at all, you know. But that's a good scenario. But like going back to the Steiner brothers, they literally were probably, in my estimation, one of the only tag teams that if you sat there and said, if you took the Road Warriors out of this loop and put them in their own dimension, the guy who's going to be taking over, or the team that's going to be taking over as the team, I would have to say are the Steiner brothers, whether you like them or not. And I like them.
Well, getting back to that, I mean, we are saying the Road Warrior was seeing the Steiner brothers.
Right.
That's a decade that back when, I would say late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah.
But there's a team I'm not going to say right now because they've been around so long, that could hold their own with either team, work themselves, and it was the Dudley Boys.
Of course.
Yes.
If you go back to, Bubba Ray Dudley's probably the best man I've ever seen on the mic. The stuff that comes out of his mouth, like he's another person that can just flow. I kind of wish I could see them at one point, the Steiners. That would be one of the most incredible things you've ever seen. The Dudleys, I think they were 10-time champions. They didn't need belts.
Right.
They never needed belts. But they had to. When you got a weak division and you want someone to carry it, those guys would carry it and bring it up 10 levels.
Yes.
They were bringing up 10 levels and make everyone around them work. There was a lot of teams like that that made guys work. The Samoan SWAT team.
Yes.
They never got a fair shake to me because they were so big. Right. They didn't know what to do with them.
They would fly out the top rope, though.
They would fly out the top. They could move.
They did more than their predecessors.
They did a lot.
Yes.
That's a team, I think, that got pushed out because of jealousy. That's just my personal opinion. If you don't fit the mold,
but what about them? Like, what about them? Like, they were in like the latter part of NWA, going into WCW as the SST with Paul Heyman, and then they move over to World Wrestling Federation as the head shrinkers.
Head shrinkers.
Okay, as an homage to the generation before.
They go from a kick-ass, butt-kicking tag team to more of a comedy act. They're wild Samoans, and they're going to eat raw chickens, and
they put limitations on them because, as Slaw can say, the worst thing in some promotions are egos. An ego in a promotion is the worst thing in the world.
It's rampant.
It's rampant. You got some guys, people don't understand. Wrestling is a show.
Yeah.
And you got some of these people, man, it's just really, we used to always say, when you believe your own gimmick is the worst thing you can do. And there's having a gimmick, living your gimmick, and actually being you.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And we talked about that. We were talking about, like, bringing tag teams together. When a tag team acts a certain way, you can't make someone act a certain way. You can't teach someone to act a certain way. It's just natural.
Right.
Like, me, like, I always got to use myself because I know myself. Me and my cousin, my partner, I had two. Once my cousin went down, I started teaming with Kwame Brown. Yeah. Kwame Brown is a 350-pound nothing but muscle with a bad temperament.
Yes.
But when we wrestled, that's who he was.
Yes.
I was the mouthpiece, which was pretty funny for me at the time. He was the bad temperament, and that's just, it was a natural progression. The worst thing in wrestling, you take these guys who are, and I like you.
Yeah.
Your size, and all of a sudden they want to make him an American badass.
Yeah.
And you're sitting there looking at them, they're talking on the mic. Dude, when you were in school, you got bullied the whole time. How are you sitting there trying to be a tough guy? Mm-hmm. It's, wrestling is a...
What do they say that's art? What did they say? It's art...
imitating
life?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, when wrestling, either you have it or you don't. It's in your blood. I know guys that can flip, fly, dive all over this ring, and the crowd will sit there because they don't know how to work a crowd. They don't know how to communicate that story. They don't know how to just, that's the worst thing in the world.
But isn't that a good reason why a tag team, you could put somebody with somebody who's more maybe well-rounded,
well,
and they can actually...
You can have a mouthpiece. You can have a mouthpiece, but you still have to know how to talk. You still have to know how to communicate that to the fans.
And to that accord, though, I think, and getting what you just said, I think it almost, nowadays, they put tag teams together to sit there and say, well, Mark, we're working on you, okay? Right. And I got plans for you, but right now you don't have it. So I'm going to put you with LeGrande, because LeGrande's going to be able to build you up. We're going to make you guys a tag team.
Of course.
And then I'm going to end up splitting you up.
Right.
Which, as a fan of tag team wrestling now, it's like you're putting something together which may be awesome because they're seeing something. Like,
but the fans want to see him, not me.
Right.
Right? That's the deal.
Right. But now it's like... Initially. But now what we're saying is if a tag team goes up, unless they really, really blow up, and we see this nowadays all the time. How many times do a main storyline is to break a tag team up? You know, back in the day, it never was.
No.
They could be pissed as all hell at each other, losing matches left and right, and they still were a tag team.
How many times they'll fight it out in the parking lot on camera? I'm gonna beat you up in the parking lot. I'm gonna hit you with this. I'm gonna hit you with that. And then the next day, you see him on TV drinking beer, beating somebody else.
We hugged it out.
You think about it right now. Right now, if you think about, I was watching and they brought them back because, truthfully, I think is when another great tag team was Beer Money.
Yes.
You know, they lived. I'm not gonna say they lived, but it's just you could tell.
Natural.
It's a natural thing.
They're a throwback.
They did it. Yeah, they did it.
They are a throwback.
Remember, how many times they try to break up the Midnight Express and the Fantastics?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Oh my God, you're like, no, you gotta leave that alone.
And it's funny you mention that because the Midnight Express are probably my favorite tag team. You know, when you're in a panel
Stan
like
or
this,
Condor?
Eaton and Lane.
Yeah.
And when you're in a panel like this, who's going to argue that the Road Warriors are the best tag team? Nobody. But the Midnight Express,
They're a mountain on their own. They are a
I
mountain on
believe
their
so.
own. But like you said, if I broke it down in World Wrestling Federation, I had the British Bulldogs. In the NWA, take the Road Warriors out of it. You're talking Stan and Eaton. But I was really partial to Blanchard and Anderson.
Well, I mean, you say that, but you're saying that there's a team that we're all just skipping over. I don't care what you say about them. I don't care.
The Mulkeys?
the Ding Dongs.
Jack and Mustafa. If you think,
no
matter what you say, they might not have made it to that. I mean, they were at a fantastic level. But Jack and Mustafa were the most entertaining people, men, wrestlers, workers, whatever you want to say, that there was. No matter what, if you wanted something to build a crowd, to what's the word I'm looking for?
Crescendo?
Yeah. I've been to shows. I was there when shows crowded, 1,000, 2,000 people, and the crowd's not into it. They send someone like Jack and Mustafa out, and the people went ballistic.
But let's be honest. The reason why Jack and Mustafa didn't get everything that they deserved, and they deserved a hell of a lot, was because promoters, wrestlers,
they feared them.
They were afraid of them.
They were afraid of them.
They were afraid.
But wouldn't you say that Jack and Mustafa, though, are for lack of a better term, a victim of the gimmick and the avenue from which is being shown in the gimmick? In other words, they worked great in ECW because they were ECW. That was what ECW.
They were Smoky Mountain first.
I was about to say, because Smoky Mountain was way before ECW.
And I think Paulie brought them in. I'm sorry to cut you off.
Go ahead.
I think Paulie brought them in because they had the White Boys. They had Public Enemy doing that gimmick. And then they said, you know what? No, we're going to show you what the gangsters are, and that was a great feud.
But it was a gangster gimmick, and as well as they portrayed it, was it not marketable? For some of the bigger
but see, here's the thing. Marketable. It was beyond marketable. And another thing is, everybody thinks of New Jack as staplers and trash cans and all that kind of crap. But New Jack can actually wrestle.
Right.
If you look at New Jack on film, going back from, let's say, yesterday back to when he started, New Jack would get in the ring and he would bust his ass. Every single time. Way before that, Mustafa would bust his ass. Way before the gangsters were all trash cans and staplers that everybody, the gangsters. No. They were actual hardcore wrestlers.
You know what the funny thing is, though? Saying that exact statement and that exact scenario is the same as someone as, dare I say it, Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan, who was known for a punch, an ear drop and a leg drop, a kick and a leg drop. In Japan, you watch Hulk Hogan wrestle in Japan, you're like, holy shit, where did this come from? Because he actually had
there's a difference.
A ground attack.
No, he had to over there. It's all name.
Yeah.
And I don't want to cut it off and make it a thing.
Right.
When you go back to New Jack and Mustafa,
yes.
And I'm not saying it because I've been there and I've seen them. I've been around 20 years. I wrestled from I was 17. It was close to 17. There's a thing in wrestling that we all know is called the good old boy nation. To be a black wrestler in wrestling, you have to work harder. no matter what they say. Like right now, no one thought that whole New Day thing was going to make it.
Oh,
Right.
Now they don't know what to do.
Right.
New
Right.
Day is so over.
Right.
And I think sooner or later they're going to split them up and use Big E for some. Big E, I thought he was going to be a like whatever. He is a mic man that'll have you in tears.
Mhm.
But
Hell of a talent.
he can work.
Hell of a talent.
Yeah.
Like I said, but like we had Ron Simmons and
But Reed,
Doom. What did
Right.
they do with Doom when they first came out? They put him in masks because
Yep.
they were black wrestlers, big black wrestlers.
Right.
And they would take the Road Warriors to the limit.
Yes.
Every
Always
single
did.
time.
Every single time. As a matter of fact, Ron Simmons was the first black heavyweight champion.
Had
Right.
great matches with the
Yeah.
Steiners and
With the
everything. Yeah.
They were incredible
Yeah.
wrestlers. And going back to Jack and Mustafa, you can say live in your gimmick. Nah. I sat back there, I seen them. They were incredible performers, absolutely. Should they have been there? Absolutely. When they fear you don't know how to control you, that's what they do. You could have made a lot of money from them. But I know, I've been there, I've listened to them, I talked to Jack, I talked to Mustafa. They wouldn't take that crap that a lot of dudes portray now.
Right.
And that I see that as the only problem. I think both of them, especially, and I'm not saying it to say it, he was one of the best wrestling minds I've ever seen when he talks about wrestling. He knew everything there was. I sat there with Ron Simmons one time, I got to talk to him, I was like, oh my God. I sat there, I listened, didn't get to talk, I was listening to Sabu one time. They think all he does is dive and jump. One of the greatest wrestling minds, when you listen to him, like, wow, he just, man.
Right.
Like,
Exactly.
That is incredible. That was incredible.
We are starting to run out of time. Real quick, just a real quick thing. I want to go around. Name a tag team that didn't get a push that you think should have. I'll start real quick. For me, overall, no matter what fed it was, for me it was the Killer Bees. I think they were just a great tag team, great look, great wrestlers, great workers, and just didn't get a push.
That was Jumping Jim Brunzell
And
B. Brian Blair.
B. Brian Blair. They were great. They even took the heel gimmick and made it a face gimmick, and like they stuck it to the heels by saying, we'll do what you do. And it was over so much, and I'm like, they never put belts on these guys. And I was like, I don't understand why. And as a kid, I was like, why don't these guys have the titles?
Not having, I mean, I think they had, the team they had their push, but not with the super big feds. I think it would be the Fantastics.
Fantastics,
The
great team.
Fantastics, they moved so smooth. When you watched them, like, wow. It was constant, smooth, just you can't say choreographed, I'm not saying that word. It was so smooth, the things they did, and it was on point. They knew each other as what they were going to do.
And you know what, though? When we recently lost Tommy Rogers just last year.
Yes, absolutely.
But, when Tommy Rogers' contract was up, and they brought in Bobby Fulton, they brought in Jackie Fulton, there's an idea, there's a scenario where the brothers come in, and it wasn't good. It didn't work. Whereas Tommy did, so that's a big thing. LeGrande, we head to you.
I'll be honest with you. I agree with you when it comes to the Bees. I agree with you when it comes to the Fantastics. But one that still holds a little place in my heart is the Eliminators. Before they could actually leave ECW and become what we all knew was one of the greatest tag teams to ever grace the ring, they were separated.
Yeah.
And Saturn I have to apologize.
Saturn went up. He went to the Big Fed, and he got his thing going and this, that, and the other. But then he was downplayed because for whatever reason.
I mean, you can say that too. I mean, I don't want to cut you off. I know we're going to get over here to Mark. There's another team I just kind of forgot about, and I'll mention was the Pitbulls.
Yeah.
They were that saved. Gary and Anthony. Like I said, we lost Anthony.
Great guy.
They gelled, and Anthony, I remember sitting back there. I remember to the show, a couple of shows I had to work them. Strongest individual I ever met. Anyone that picks my ass up at 370 pounds at the time and threw me across the ring.
Yep.
I tried to do it, folks. It doesn't work.
You're sitting there, and you're like, wow. And I remember one match, I think I hit him with everything but the kitchen sink. He kept getting up. I was like, God damn. What do I got to do to get this guy to stay down?
Real quick, I need yours.
Sure, I'll make this short and sweet. We talked about this a little bit earlier off camera. Power and Glory. Talk about a tag team that that really could have.
They were there for 30 seconds.
Yeah,
Paul
and if I can add one more into the Nasty Boys, even though they had their run, think of it this way: if you guys go back and watch Halloween Havoc '90, they wrestled the Steiner Brothers.
Yeah,
that was October '90. In March of '91, they're WWF Tag Team Champions. So you know somebody had to have watched that match with the Steiners, hired the Nasty Boys, got them in, and I think they kind of took Power and Glory's spot. Because Power and Glory were just about to hit their stride. They lose a 30-second squash to the LOD at 7.
Right.
And the Nasty Boys win the tag titles, and I think that kind of stopped Power and Glory's run. So I'm bringing the Nasty Boys involved. But
and Nasty Boys are a great team.
And they didn't have that look that people want, the super big muscles and all that. They could work.
Right.
They could work the crowd. What we talked about earlier, working the crowd.
And 20-some years later, don't the Dudley Boys look a lot like the Nasty Boys in a sense? In your opinion?
You know what?
Really think about it for a second. Really.
Devon and Bova, I really do think when you watch them, they kind of developed their own thing.
Over time they did. They really did from ECW
on up.
If you want
to say from the beginning of their career, absolutely. But now they've evolved to a level that is
completely different.
And at the ages that they are, because I'm pushing 47. We came around the same time, so I'm not going to say it was none of my business. They're not young guys.
No.
And they can still keep up with the young boys. And that's a great
proves
testament.
the point.
Take the young boys to task.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's a
Make
great
them
testament
work harder than they planned on.
Yeah.
Guys, we could talk about this forever. Unfortunately, the producer's giving me the high sign. We're going to get out of here. Thanks for joining us here on That Way Cool Wrestling Show. Remember, join us at thatwaycoolwrestlingshow.com. You can also join them on Facebook at That Way Cool Wrestling Show. For Charles, LeGrande, Mark, my name is Danny J. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you at the matches. Thanks, everybody.
Chuck, you don't look a day over 45.